Hey everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to the webinar, Tips on Applying for a Grant from National PTA. And we're delighted to be giving you this webinar. We're hoping that it will be something that you can use both for this round of grants and in the future. So we will have this in a YouTube version. It will be recorded so that we can use afterwards. So with us today, I'm Sean Arthurs. I'm with the National PTA. I'm the Senior Manager of Education Initiatives. We also have...
Hi everybody, I'm Alyssa Monchal. I am Manager of Programs and Partnerships here at National PTA.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm a specialist with Programs and Partnerships at National PTA.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here with us today. I think there's some people coming on, but we're going to get started with some processes as people are getting on and joining us. So the platform that we use is called GoToWebinar. So I'm just going to show you a little bit of what you have on the right-hand side of your screen. So everybody right now is on mute. We do that because we know you guys are listening in from various places. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable so you don't have to worry about any of your background noise. However, we do want you to participate with us. So if you see on the slide, there's this nice red circle around questions. If at any time during this presentation you have any question, go ahead and type it into that section and hit enter. If it is a question that can be answered right away, Natalie will respond directly to that question. Otherwise, Natalie will be curating the questions throughout, and we will have a chance to address everything all at once at the end. So feel free to type in as we go, or you can save your questions till the end, whatever works for you, but we will be interacting with you through the questions feature. All right. So looking at the agenda for today. So we're going to do a little bit of the introduction, which is what we're going through now. Then we're going to talk about why grants. Why is National PTA giving all of these grants out to the field? Then we'll tell you a little bit about our grant process. How do we review applications? Where are the applications? And then we're going to share with you 10 tips that we've seen from the applications over the past year and things that we want to make sure that you know so that you can feel and be as successful as possible.
Thanks, Alyssa. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is why grants. And everybody on here, hopefully we are going to give everyone on here a better chance of winning a grant from National PTA, which can often involve, a lot of our grants out right now are for $1,000 in cash, some of which you have to use for the event. We have a couple of grants right now that also offer the opportunities for in-kind gifts or donations, multiple hundreds of dollars worth of value in, for example, we're going to have a Think Fund grant coming up, and then we're also going to have a very special new grant that we're launching on September 19th. We'll talk to you about that more a little bit later. But National PTA, we are now offering hundreds of grants per year. That's right, hundreds of grants. And we have lots of PTAs out there, and we want to help position you so that your PTA can win lots of these grants. And we've gotten some questions from PTAs in the past, so that that led to this webinar on tips for applying. So why do we use grants? Why is this a vehicle that we use for working with local PTAs? We've got 4 broad reasons. First, there's an emerging need or a growing challenge. For example, around STEM education, right? I mean, a lot of us know about the digital divide in STEM, and we know about the jobs that are going to be available in STEM in a few years. And we want to respond to what we heard from parents and members that said, hey, we want more STEM education, and hey, this is a great chance for PTAs to help bring families and kids together to do something fun around STEM. I'm just going to tease this, we've got some digital stuff coming up, and we want you to keep paying attention to our website and all our newsletters to learn more about that. Healthy school meals is another area where we've seen growing challenges and that we wanted to work with PTAs and families. Why else do we offer grants? Well, we want PTAs, we want to help build PTAs that know how to deliver quality content, right? I mean, this makes the PTA more valuable in the school, to the administration, and it makes you more valuable to your members. We want to help give you toolkits and everything you need to help deliver a strong program that uses best practices and best principles in family engagement for your families and kids. So you'll see with a lot of our grants, we offer toolkits online. We give you templates for advertising. We give you templates for recruiting. We give you templates for follow-up. We help work with We have worked with local PTAs to figure out what they need. I mean, the reason we knew what documents to provide is because local PTAs have shared with us, we would like this, we could use this would be helpful. And so what we try to do is be responsive, develop those documents and post them online. Because we want to create and help build PTAs on the ground that you can deliver quality content and you know how to deliver a quality program model, how to do a great event. Another reason we do grants is very simple. A lot of our grants are $1,000 each. We also offer some grants that are a little bit less. We also offer some grants that are in kind, where you get STEM games, for example. But a lot of them it's cash, and we want to eliminate any barriers that you might have to having that event. And then, so how you would use that cash. Some grants are a little more restrictive or a little more specific around how to use that cash. Other times, we encourage you to think creatively on your own around whether it's by getting translators or getting transportation. Is it by doing multilingual advertising? Is it by making sure that there are incentives for teachers to come? But we want to eliminate the barrier. We want to eliminate any barriers, and we want you to be able to have events and not have to worry about the cost of these events, because we know that happens. And then the last one is we want to create value for PTA members. We want to strengthen membership. I mean, if you as a PTA leader, and I know we have PTA leaders across the country listening to this and that will be listening to it as it's recorded, you want to create value for both your members of your PTA at the school level, and you also want to show the value of PTA to the school. So if you're bringing in these awesome events, you win a grant from National PTA and you're able to host an event, you're showing the value to your members and also to your school. So these are the big 4 buckets around why we're using grants as vehicles and why we offer so many. As I said, we are shifting to an era now where National PTA is offering hundreds of grants a year. And what Alyssa's going to do is tell us a little bit about what's this actual process. You know, as we're offering these hundreds of grants, like what does the process look like? So Alyssa's going to tell us some background on that.
So we'll start with the process for the grants program. We wanted to begin with the application overview. All of our applications are online. They're available in both English and Spanish. So you will find those applications at pta.org/grants. And as Sean was saying, that we're offering hundreds of grants throughout the year. So I would suggest on a periodic basis, just going back and checking that website to see what is there and if there is anything that your PTA might be interested in. The online applications are really simple. We've set it out to these really specific requirements that you guys can all meet. So we are looking for demographic information, your school information, your information, PTA information, things that you should readily have on hand. Make sure that you know what your PTA unit ID number is, because it will ask you for that. And then 3 to 4 narrative questions that really help us to see what your PTA community needs and how these grants can help you to meet those needs. And as Sean was talking about barriers, how can you, with this grant funding, remove the barriers for your families to attend these events? So we'll look into those questions and how we approach those questions a little bit more in a couple of minutes, but every grant is just that. It's basically just one page that you scroll through, and every online application will be there for you.
And we deliberately made this as simple an application as we could. We wanted the application, and we took out all the extraneous information. We do want to have some questions that separate, that give you a chance to show why your PTA deserves the grant over another PTA. But we tried to make this as simple as possible. You know, you might want to review the application once, as Alyssa said, and then come back to it, fill it out. I mean, maybe a total of an hour, maybe even less if you are well prepared and have your information. And once you've got that grant application filled out online in English or Spanish and you hit submit, Alyssa's going to tell us what happens on our end. So once we get your application in our big computer database, what do? And we wanted to give you insight into that so you can have be fully transparent and you can have a sense of the process on our end. So your application has been submitted. Alyssa's going to tell us what the next steps are.
There are a couple of things that we need to check on our end. So in order to receive grant funding, every PTA needs to be in good standing with their state. So if you aren't sure where your standing is, it's a good thing to check before you submit the application. That way we have had help with getting local PTAs back into good standing, but we would rather you guys be able to have that done beforehand because we can't give you grant funding unless you are in good standing. So then we also check PTA eligibility. Are you able to meet the eligibility requirements for what that grant is asking? So some of the grant applications have different requirements. Those will always be listed on pta.org before the application. So you can see what those requirements are. For example, for Take Your Family to School Week, you would wind up, one of the eligibility requirements are you able to host the event during Take Your Family to School Week? So we want to make sure that those eligibility requirements are being met so that we can give you the funding. So when we know that those are going to be met, we also do a double-blind review. So we have judges who are external from the programs team scoring your applications. There are 2 judges that score every single application, and this is a blind review. So if you see double blind, we're talking about 2 judges who don't know what applications they're reviewing. So we remove all demographic information from those applications. So all that they are reviewing are your narrative questions. They're not looking at anything that is demographic. If there are eligibility questions, they don't see those eligibility questions either. So they are only reviewing your application on what you write in your narrative. And they're going to score against a rubric. So we provide them with a rubric, and we're going to look at last year's Take Your Family to School Week rubric in just a minute. And then once we get all of those scores back to us, we tabulate them, we double check everything, and depending on eligibility and what the grant is, we may need to apply a geography or Title I filter because we want to make sure that we are hitting as many PTAs as possible and that we're really giving this grant funding to as diverse a PTA population as we can.
So as Alyssa's going to pull up a sample rubric so you can see what we give our scores, just a quick recap. So when your application is submitted, we are going to review it blind, meaning we do not know where you're at. We just take out the answers to the substantive questions. And we have our review team review that against a rubric that we're going to show you that has scores. So we do not know what state you're from. We do not know what city you're from. We do not know your name. We try to make it's completely as blind as we can, right? So that we are just looking at your answers. And we're not really concerned about typos. Like, we're trying to get at the substance of what you have to say. And double blind, we have at least 2 reviewers that look at it. So Alyssa's going to show us a rubric that this is what we give our reviewers. And Alyssa and I, by the way, and Natalie, we can all give you as many tips as we want because we don't do the review. Okay, so we have different reviewers and they get their own training on how to do the review. So we can give you all these tips, and we really hope that you're listening to this, and we hope that you share this with other people in your PTA that are applying. And that's why we're excited to be here, trying to help you win these grants. So Alyssa's going to show us a rubric, and the rubric is what we give our reviewers, and we say, use this to grade each answer.
And just before I pull up the rubric, I want to address a question came up. You do not need to be on the board of your PTA to apply for a grant. So anybody who is a PTA member can submit the grant application. However, in order to receive grant funding, you will need the award letter to be signed by your PTA president. So if you are planning on applying, make sure that you are having open communications with other members on your PTA so that you all are in this together. Let's look at that rubric. So this was the rubric from this past year's Take Your Family to School Week. And you'll see that we have a kind of a grade band. So last year's, similar to the applications that we just described, there were 3 narrative questions. The first question was, what are the family engagement needs of your school community? Consider how your PTA works with the school community to increase family engagement. And if you look here, an application who answered this question and received a score of 8 to 10 clearly showed understanding of the meaning of family engagement. They offered a strong, appropriate family engagement need. So they understood family engagement. They told us what their need was in their community. And then there is no or limited family engagement opportunities currently existing. So we're looking at what is the question asks you, what is your family engagement needs of your school community, right? So we're looking at you identifying what those needs were and then how you're going to meet those needs. So an application that would have received a score of 4 to 7 on this question would have just shown some family engagement opportunities that already exist, and that this was not going to move the needle for their community. An application that received 1 to 3 as a score showed that they didn't really identify a clear understanding or need for improved family engagement, and that they had many family engagement opportunities already existing. So we want to make sure that we're helping to remove barriers. So we need you to identify what those barriers are for us so that we can be able to remove them. We know that every PTA has different barriers and that every PTA is going to be different, but you need to be able to tell us those things. All right, so if you look at this rubric, similar format for all questions, and these are, we have rubrics that are created for each question. So the Mathnasium rubric, the Bayer rubrics, any digital safety rubrics or health and safety rubrics will be specific to what the goal is of that program. So Take Your Family to School Week is primarily about family engagement. That's why these questions are so focused on making sure that you are identifying your family engagement need. Are applicants given a copy of the rubric when applying? So no, we don't provide the rubric to applicants. We're showing this rubric because it is one that we are not using.
And the reason that we don't give a rubric ahead of time is because we feel like our questions are strong. It's a strong pointer towards what we're looking for. I mean, when we ask you about your school community, we want you to tell us about your school community in the order and what's important to you. We don't think that, we're not trying to trick anybody with our questions, so we think they're very straightforward. We also don't give a rubric out, we don't give the rubric out ahead of time, only because we don't want people writing answers that just go to the rubric, right? I mean, we want your individual story, and we've had very diverse winners in every sense of the word, from incredibly creative to communities that don't have teacher support, to communities that, you know, this would be the next level that would take them. There's all sorts of different reasons for why PTAs win this. And so we do not give out the rubric in advance, but again, it's because we think the questions are pretty straightforward, and we would want to hear your own story. All right, what we're going to do now, we're going to give you our top 10 tips for applying for a PTA grant. So if you have been sleeping for the first part of this webinar, wake up, wake up. Many of these things will sound familiar because we've already mentioned some of them, but we hope it encapsulates what you need to know, what helps you best when you're a PTA applying for a grant. So we'll give the first 3, and they're in blue, they're process tips. Number 1, know what grants exist. And if there's one thing you take away from this webinar, it is, you should watch this whole webinar. But if there's one very specific thing you take away, pta.org/grants. If you go to that website, you'll see, if you go to that website right, don't go right now because you're watching this webinar, but if you go to this website right afterwards, you will see that we have 5 open grants. And if you check that webinar, if you check that website every 2 weeks or so, you can, you can see what new grants we have up. And our grants are open for about a month. So if you check it every 2 weeks. Now I wonder, Alyssa, is there another way they could do it instead of checking the website every 2 weeks?
If you want to have a more automated information system, you can sign up for our e-newsletters, and when you receive Weekend Update, every time we open a new grant application, there will always be an announcement in there, and then we generally post a reminder within Weekend Update so that everybody sees where those applications are and what's happening. Also, if you don't already follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, we also post all of our announcements there. Sometimes those announcements are done live in a live event. Other times they're just posted with some really fun photos and links directly to the grant applications.
So it's kind of like, it's like the opposite of the letters I get from my bank. You can open your email, you can sign up so you get emails telling you about how to get money, which is why it's the opposite of the letters I get from my bank when I get emails telling me why I don't have any money. So you can sign up for Weekend Newsletter, or you can go to pta.org/grants. That's our first tip. Second tip, know what grant you're applying for. So every PTA, you have to be in good standing with your state. And that's going to be a requirement to get any money from National PTA or any in-kind gifts. But look for what grant look at the grant requirements. Are we talking about a family science fair? Well, then maybe you can talk about how your community has a deep commitment to science, or lots of parents interested in science. Don't talk about healthy eating when you're applying for our science grants. That doesn't mean we think you can eat unhealthily at our science events, not at all. It just means know what grant. I mean, if you're applying for the healthy eating grant, talk about healthy and talk about fun runs and talk about things like that. I think that's common sense to a lot of us, but I just want to give us a reminder, know what grant you're applying for. And the last one in our process tip is know what you will write. And we put this in here because our grant platform, as Alyssa mentioned earlier, you can't actually save your application. So we recommend going to the grant, taking a quick look. Again, it's only 3 or 4 questions. You need your PTA ID and address, but then you need to think about 3 or 4 questions. So go there, take a look at those 3 or 4 questions, maybe socialize those questions or discuss those questions with other people on your PTA or whomever is in your kitchen cabinet, whomever you brainstorm with. You can cut and paste those questions out and answer them in Word, by the way, insider tip, so you can take as much time as you want to think through, and then you can go back into the application and cut and paste them in. Or you've already gotten your money's worth from that webinar, just with that tip right there, number 3. So those are our 3 process tips. Now we're going to shift to, we have some substantive tips on what to actually write. And these are, Alyssa's going to tell us about 4 tips for substance.
Sure. So coming back to it, share about your community. We want to know about your PTA. Back to what we were talking about before, every community is different, right? We want to know what creative and unique things you are doing with your community and what makes your PTA different. Where are we going to see your team, who is working on everything with you, that you are giving us a picture of what is happening with your PTA. 5, share why this grant would be important to you. Tying that back to your community. Why is it important to your PTA, to your school, to your students, to your families? And once again, importance is going to change based upon your community needs. So that's why we need to know about your community first, so that we can see how this grant is important to you and how it would be important to your community. And number 6, you want to share how you will make all families feel welcome. So this is talking about how are you communicating that this event is going to happen? How are you welcoming families when they are in your spaces? There are many different ways you can approach how you make families feel welcome, but we want to know very concrete and specific examples, and that's number 7. So for all of these things, every time that you're talking about it, it cannot be vague. We want to know the exact things that you plan on doing to answer these questions.
Yeah, so recapping those 4 substantive tips, and these are the tips that we're giving you to help answer those 3 or 4 questions. When we ask you why does this grant matter to your community, tell me that your community lost their STEM teacher last year, or I mean, if it's accurate, obviously, but tell me the story about your community. And we know that every community and every PTA has a great story to tell. Tell me about why this would make a difference in your community. Why would this grant, why would this grant be very important to your kids, to your families, to the environment around, to your school, to your neighborhood, we had a grant winner last year that talked about how there was a natural disaster that occurred near their school, and this would really help bring their school back in. There was a winner there. There was a winner when we talked about different ones with how it tied in with parents' jobs locally. There's all sorts of different reasons, but make it your story. And tell me why this grant would be important. How will you make all families feel welcome? And guess what, folks? That doesn't mean just like all PTA families or all families across racial divisions or gender divisions. It can also mean all families that are not in the PTA. So listen, this is another pro tip here. You can maybe use these events to help increase your PTA membership, right? If you're putting on an event and it's got to be open to the whole school community, and then you can have a little PTA membership table there where you say, hey folks, we put on cool events like this all the time. Join the PTA. Yep, that's right. Membership tips, use these events. And then a specific idea, can you talk about how in the past you did this, or you have partnered with somebody else, or give me an example of the last event we did had 7,000 people. Probably didn't have 7,000 people. This isn't a summer concert. But you get what I'm saying, like that you had lots of people, you had lots of food. Give us some examples. So those are the 4 tips we give you on answering the substantive questions, those 3 or 4 questions in our application that are asking your PTA for information, and that are going to set it apart.
I'm just going to piggyback off those examples. There's also, you can give us examples of things you haven't been able to do, but that you've always wanted to do. So if you've always wanted to host this type of event and you haven't been able to, you can tell us those things. Those are also great examples to share. So if we're looking at the last 3 tips, these are our don'ts. So backing up on this, don't be generic, right? We all know that everybody is going to send flyers home or that you're going to post on Facebook, right? We want to know the new and innovative things that you are doing, right? That you're not just giving us stats about STEM, that you're really talking to us about how will STEM be beneficial with your students, right? Don't forget about your families, number 9. So this isn't just about your PTA, but your families are why we do what we do. So how is this going to impact your families? And then number 10, don't give up. We're always adding more grants. Past winners can't win the same grant again. Past winners, you can win other grants, but not the exact same one. And some of these are straight giveaways. So all you'll need to do is submit, and then you will have the same chance as everybody else. So make sure that you're always checking back, because we want to get this funding out to you, and we want to make sure that everybody has the same level of opportunity to apply for these grants. And also, if you don't receive a grant, we will help you on the programs end to host these programs without the grant funding. They are designed to be hosted by any PTA. So we are here and we are happy to help.
Yeah, we have toolkits online, and we post these toolkits to support PTAs as they do the events. That's got all these documents and all the templates that we were speaking about earlier. Those are online and they're freely accessible, even if you don't win the grant, right? So the grant, we know that the grants are going to help some PTAs and they're going to be an incentive. But if you're saying, you know what, I love that science festival idea, or I love that digital safety idea, or I love that health and fitness idea, I'm going to do it even if I don't win the grant. We say, hurrah. Go online, look at our toolkit. We've got all the documents you need. So those are our last 3 tips. Don't be generic. Don't forget about your families, right? That's why you're applying for this, to help your families. And then don't give up. We are moving into an era, and by the time you watch this webinar, if you watch this in a week or 2 weeks, who knows, we could be in the thousands. Probably not within a week or 2. But right now, we're moving into an era where National PTA is going to be offering up over 100 and into the multiple hundreds of grants. We're going to be offering those up to local PTAs. We want to get you this money. We want to get you these resources so that you can make a difference in the lives of your families and your communities. So we've got a recap of the 10 tips, and then we're going to put up a slide. Just if you have any questions after this webinar, you can email us. But what we'll do is we'll stay on for another 2 minutes, just taking questions, and then we'll wrap up just so we can keep it to a tight half an hour. So we'll take any questions you might have right now. Natalie's going to be looking at those, and we'll answer them. And don't worry though, afterwards, if you have any questions, we're going to put up a final slide that will have an email address where you can email us. Hint, it's our PTA programs email, programs@pta.org. So that won't be a shocker, the big reveal there. But you've got our 10 tips, and there's our email if you have any questions after this webinar. So love that everyone's on here with us. We hope this helps you win lots and lots and lots of money, not in Vegas, but at pta.org/grants. Let's see what kind of questions we've got going on. Is there a list of schools that have won previous grants? There absolutely is. If you go to, now for that one, you would want to go to each program. So for example, if for STEM winners, if you go to pta.org/STEM, or you can even go to, and then you'll see a grant opportunities there. You can, and what we're going to do, can we switch that over real quick? Alyssa's actually going to switch that over the screen so you can look at it on your webinar. Look at that. First of all, that beautiful map that our that our web genius here at National PTA built up. You can sort and see which schools around the country won previous grants geographically. And on the left-hand side, there's like a little click box. You can see who won the Think Fund, who won Bayer, who won Mathnasium, who won Microsoft. And you're seeing all those pop up. Look at that. They're all across the United States. And we even have some winners in Europe as well. That's right, some Department of Defense schools. In addition to this map, on the same website, you will see lists. You will see a list that'll pull up a PDF, right? So when Alyssa scrolls down here, you can see, check out the 2018 Family Tech Night grant recipients. There you go. And Alyssa's pulled, and so there you can see all the winners just listed on the PDF. And remember, as Alyssa said, if you want a Math Night grant, you can't apply to win a math night grant again. But you can apply for a science night grant, a healthy eating grant, a digital grant, a tech night grant. So you can apply for every other grant. You just can't win the same one twice, right? That's kind of doesn't seem fair. But guess what? To everybody else who's listening, think to yourself, the top 35 winners from last year are not going to be in the next pool of applicants. So you've got a better chance. So don't forget our 10th tip. Don't give up. Keep applying. Keep applying. We want to see more and more people applying for these grants because we want to get more grants out to you.
Next question is it possible for us to try to win grants for schools we don't attend, but that need funding and help? So my suggestion here would be yes. Please reach out to those PTA leaders and make sure that you are planning that with them. So it's really awesome, and we love to see PTA units helping each other build capacity. We want to make sure that you are working with that unit so that you can help them do what they are planning to do and what they need to do for their own community.
Yeah, so and love that, the thinking there around building capacity in a PTA that might be a little under-resourced or maybe has fewer members than you. But obviously they need to be authentically involved in the process. So a first step I would suggest is call up that PTA leader, or you can just call usually the front desk of the school and ask the PTA leader, or you might know who it is, and then ask him or her and say, hey, I saw this awesome webinar on pta.org about grant applications, and then I saw all the grants they have open, and they have a STEM grant. Would you have any interest in applying for that? I'd be happy to help you write the application, or we'd be happy to help. Here's another pro tip, by the way. If you get two PTAs that apply together, or you're supporting another PTA and you say one PTA members will go over and help the other school, that's a good one. Our reviewers like that. Another free tip. And any other questions? Okay, so what we're going to do, folks, we'll look at programs@pta.org is the email address. If you have any questions, please write us there. That email address will always get responses. And please check pta.org/grants to see what grants we have available. Sign up for the e-newsletter if you just want to get those emails that tell you about new grants. Look at our top 10 tips, and we look forward to seeing some grant applications, some amazing grant applications, and look forward to celebrating your PTA winning a grant down the road.
Thanks everybody for joining us. If you are watching this webinar as a recording on YouTube and you do have any questions, feel free to put those questions in the comment section of the YouTube page. Our social media manager will get those comments, and that is one way that you can get directly to us. We will answer those for you. Or, as John was saying, you can email us at programs@pta.org, but sometimes it's easier to ask those questions right in the moment. You can do that in the comment section. This webinar was great. Thank you all for joining us. I can't wait to see all of the applications come in.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great Thursday.